So have you seen that Tucker Carlson has gone like full Christian fascist at this point? He's like talking about how a demon attacked him in his sleep. And there was something else crazy he said recently. Like, he said that we're probably getting hurricanes not because of climate change, but because of abortion, because it's the wrath of God. This is the kind of thing that he's saying now that he has his own platform. I gotta say, I never thought the dude was that crazy. He was clearly affiliated with like Nazi, old school KKK type of stuff. But, I mean, he's really gone off the fucking deep end, which is probably a good thing, because it's probably gonna, it at least makes him less palatable than he was before. But, I mean, he certainly has an audience.
Yeah, he's been getting more and more nuts. I didn't know he was blaming hurricanes on abortions, but that's just like, I can't remember. One of those TV evangelist type people after Hurricane Katrina famously blamed it on gay people, I believe it was. So it's always some fuck like that. But the moment I knew he had completely gone off the deep end was just recently at the not the last rally, but the rally with the famous Tony Hinchcliffe being a giant racist. When he was talking about her, and he says, I can't remember even what he said, but he's like, black, what, this, the communist or whatever, but he's like smiling and laughing and shaking his head, and he has the most maniacal look on his face, and he's not really even saying anything that he would even think is clever. He's just like spewing this crazy rhetoric and just like getting off on it. The look on his face and the mania in it, like, I don't know how any rational people can look at that and be like, yeah, that guy's got his head on straight.
One interesting thing, to go back to Jordan Jensen, sorry to bring her up all the time and sort of chronicle her politics, but I guess it's because she's very open about her politics, and actually a lot of comedians aren't. A lot of comedians will speak from a certain political perspective, but they don't really talk about what they think and believe that much, and maybe that's why I'm intrigued with her, is that she does that more. And she also, I mean, I genuinely believe she's one of the most talented comics out. I think she has a potentially super powerful voice, just because she speaks very relatably. But she seems to have something clicked for her, where she seems to have pivoted back in the other direction, where what she's been saying lately is that seeing specifically Tony Hinchcliffe at the Madison Square Garden rally made her be like, whoa, this edgelord shit has gone too far. This is like just too sinister. You know what I mean? And it's exactly what you were talking about at that rally. I don't know if you were talking about Tony Hinchcliffe being the one who was like smiling and saying all that creepy shit, but that was totally the vibe. And so for her, you know, she said even she has like tied it into the controversial things that she says about trans people too. And she's just like, okay, you know what? I think we took this too far. I think we said enough about it. You know, this doesn't feel good anymore. This isn't fun anymore. Something weird is going on here. And I think also, you know, Kamala Harris and just general Democrats on, you know, the issue of abortion has been a big part of what, like I think she voted in that direction this time. Not that that's any of my business or whatever, but I think it's an indicator. And I think when it comes to comedy, we're probably going to see more of that. I mean, it feels like there's less of a quote-unquote need for some of this like hateful, cruel rhetoric in comedy, when it's like, yeah, no, that's in power now. Like, that is one, I wouldn't call it an upside, but it's an interesting aspect of this, is that, you know, if Republicans and conservatives thought they were the punks, they were the rebellious anti-establishments, you know, that's not true anymore. They're not going to have that ground anymore. So I'm happy to go back to being the underdogs in this fight, and the ones that are ultimately historically right, and get to claim our punk, etc., in the culture as we rightfully should. You know, not that it's much consolation, but it is a dynamic shift that we're going to see. I think it's like now that Trump is fully empowered and has absolutely no reason to appease the left or Democrats or anything like that. He has no reason to try to govern to the center. He's going to go as far right as he wants to go. You know, it's going to change the tone of the country in general. And I think this idea that Republicans are righteous because they're railing against the system, I think that's going to evaporate pretty quickly. Because, I mean, you and I know the right has always been in power, and from that perspective, something along these lines was essentially an inevitability. I think there's going to be a lot of buyer's remorse, man, among some of these people. You know, some of these Trump voters are very radical, and they want all the things that he said he's going to do. They're fucking psycho. They're in the cult, so even if they see really bad things happening, they're just going to trust that this is God's process, etc., etc. But some of these people, man, they don't fully understand what they've done, and they're definitely going to start to notice it. And I mean, I think things are going to get disastrous in this country, and people are going to have buyer's remorse. And that's why I say, like, I think it's important when that happens, not if that happens. Don't know to what extent it's going to happen, but it is going to happen. I think it's important for us on the left to not be like, see, I told you, fucking idiot. That's why we have to keep focusing on putting out the right ideas, so that when that buyer's remorse happens, people can gravitate in that direction. They have somewhere to go, so that they don't feel like, well, now I'm stuck in this Trump camp. I'm stuck having to believe that Trump is right and that this is all going to work out in my favor eventually, because I can't humiliate myself by going over and with my tail between my legs to this group of people that's not even going to accept me because I voted for Trump. And that's uncomfortable. I mean, I don't want to try to court a bunch of Trump voters, but it is inevitable, especially with some of these union workers, etc. When it comes to the tariffs, when it comes to mass deportations, man, people are going to start seeing that, and I think it's going to wake some people the fuck up. And they need to feel like they can come to different conclusions once again on their own, rather than feeling like it's ideas that somebody else has already taken ownership of. They need to feel like those ideas are already out there for them to take ownership of. You know what I'm saying? And that's how we're going to see a real shift in the right direction, which is the opposite of the right
buyer's
direction.
Remorse is a really good way to put that. I like that a lot. And I think you're absolutely right. Some of them are going to get buyer's remorse, and it's a good point to not be like, see, haha, I told you, don't you wish you voted for Kamala? As tempting as that would be, because it's not going to do any good. And we need the people who are rational enough, who aren't just racist, sexist pieces of shit that just have bought his con, to go ahead and extend that olive branch when they're coming to that realization. Because otherwise they are just going to double down and lean into it because they don't have another choice. I think there's going to be a lot of people that wake up to the buyer's remorse, and are going to be scared when the things that would shock them out of supporting Trump, like the mass deportation or seeing families in cages and stuff, that might make them fear going against that side. I mean, that's not to keep going to the Nazi Germany but their similarities are so shocking that it's just apt enough. So there were people in Germany that went along with it because they were scared, rightfully so. So extending that olive branch, being there to be like, okay, well, good, I'm glad you agree. This has gotten out of hand. We need to work to make sure it never happens again, to fight this however we can, whatever resistance we can do, and then put up someone better next term. So I just don't know what that's going to look like. What level of Trump supporters will see something and finally be like, that is enough? But there definitely should be people on the left ready to help them kind of get away from that, almost like when a family member deprograms someone after escaping a cult. I mean, it's not almost like, that's exactly what it's like. It's crazy how quickly people forget things, or at least choose not to remember them. The way Trump was having his ICE goons round up people and put them in cages. I mean, that was such a big deal before the pandemic hit and kind of took over, the news cycle, obviously. But I mean, ICE was putting families in cages, random people in cages, all these people to deport them or get them out of the country, and they were getting like actual legal citizens by mistake, or immigrants who aren't citizens but are allowed to be here because of their visa or whatever the case, separating families. There's so many cases where parents would get deported and the kids were left in the country, or other things like that. Still people trying to reconnect and find family members to this day from that era. Like, we're gonna go right back there as soon as he's back. He's talking about mass deportations on day one and shit like that. I doubt he'll get it moving that quickly, but it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen fast. Any of his hate-fueled bullshit always comes through. And I mean, the similarities to Nazi Germany just keep coming. I hate going to that well all the time, but I mean, it's shockingly similar. I don't know how anyone can vote for that or allow that, even if you are really anti-immigration and very strict about that kind of thing. You want them deported or whatever. How can you want them locked in cages and families separated and stuff like that? It's just so cruel and cold-hearted. Even if you want everything to be taken care of, the people who are here illegally gone, that's not the way to do it if you have any kind of decency or humanity. These people just don't care.
Well, and when it comes to immigration, even amongst people that don't necessarily want to see the barbarism at the border, like aren't super anti-immigration but are more agnostic on it, or just like not fans of Democrats in general. There's a lot of libertarians who are pro-immigration in general because they understand that immigration is good for the workforce, even though for them they like the idea of being able to pay people below minimum wage, so that's part of it as well. But like the Koch brothers famously support immigration, robust immigration, et cetera, et cetera. My point being that I think the reason a lot of that has washed out when it comes to immigration, the fervency over how bad things were during Trump's administration, is because Biden has kind of failed to differentiate himself against that. And it's an interesting wedge issue because it's like, I believe that they do have a problem to solve at the border. And I think Trump's success has been in part that he correctly identified something that people were already worried about. It's like one of those little emotional seeds that I was talking about. The idea of, immigrants coming over here, they're making our country dirtier, they're having all these children and taking over the country, all the way leading up to Elon Musk saying that they're going to replace the population in all the swing states with immigrants. All of that plays off of this little emotional seed of fear that comes from like the image that people have in their minds about what's happening in the border and why, in terms of people coming over. And I think the reason that the image in people's minds of how bad Trump's policies were has washed out is because people perceive Biden as doing mostly the same thing, a lot of the same thing, even Obama. There are similarities to what Obama's border policy looked like and what Biden's border policy looked like and Trump's. The difference with Trump is you had people like Stephen Miller working inside the government diligently to make sure the policy was as cruel as possible. But I've talked to some of my friends out here that are more left-leaning, and they say things like Biden just does the same border policies as Trump, which to an extent is true. There are many things that Trump was doing during that time that the media was panicking about that Biden also did. There are things that Trump put on the books that Biden either got rid of and then put back on the books or never took off of the books, specifically when it comes to immigration. But that doesn't mean that they're doing all of the same things. People perceive it that way, though. And I think that's also partially why we're about to see Trump get so much more draconian with immigration. Like, people are about to figure it out. If people forgot, they're about to remember what it felt like to have somebody like Trump in control of the immigration system. And it's going to be much worse this time. And that is the kind of thing that I think is going to shock some people. But I don't know how far that has to go. Historically, genocides of that nature happen kind of quietly, and life sort of goes on as normal. Somebody pointed out, though, that those people they want to deport are an enormous part of the workforce here. It would potentially collapse the economy. It probably would. I think many of the policies that Trump and the Republicans are going to go through with are definitely going to crash the economy. I think we are going to see that. So if the economy is one of the biggest issues that people vote on, if that's one of the biggest motivators that people see, then okay, we are definitely about to see what that looks like. And that's why it's hard for me to picture this going any other way than an enormous train wreck with a lot of people feeling like they shouldn't have voted for Trump, whether that means anything or whether that leads to them saying it out loud or leads to any kind of difference in the pressure Trump faces. I have no idea, but to me, that's almost a certainty unless something gets in the way of their agenda, which is still possible, but not that possible.